what about if we were to stay closer to home and retire in Southeast Asia? So is retiring in Southeast Asia much cheaper than Singapore? Well, again, using that study that I saw before, absolutely it is. So if we say living costs in the UK are about 14% cheaper than Singapore, then Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Indonesia come out at about 47 to 50% cheaper living costs. If we look at rents, so assuming that you're going to be renting long term and not buying, similar to where we saw the UK being 50% cheaper, we've got Thailand being 77%, Malaysia 84%, Vietnam 77%, Indonesia 85% lower. So again, I would take these with a pinch of salt because I think it depends where you're living. So Thailand, absolutely sure that you could find somewhere in the countryside and find somewhere very cheap. But if you're thinking of being in Phuket, where a lot of the expats are, rental costs are a lot more higher. Similarly, I'm sure with Malaysia, there's definitely going to be places you can find that are cheap. But maybe if you're in Kuala Lumpur, you're not going to be finding it 85% cheaper than Singapore. If I think about Indonesia, the one that comes up often is Bali. Again, I'm sure you could be in the middle of farmland and not pay a lot in rent. But equally, if you want to be in the middle of Seminyak in a really nice villa, okay, it's not going to be as expensive as Singapore, but it's definitely not going to be 85% cheaper. So definitely take those with a pinch of salt. But on the face of it, it definitely looks like your living costs would be much lower. The other element that's worth thinking about is what the impact would be on your own circumstances around where you've potentially got assets. So I've picked out Malaysia and Vietnam here. So Malaysia has got a double taxation treaty with the UK. And if you have got a large UK pension, and like we saw in the previous example, you will pay income tax on that, which is a massive drag. Well, the double taxation treaty between Malaysia and the UK says Malaysia will tax you on your pension rather than the UK. And the percentage rate that Malaysia charges you is 0%. So they tax you at 0. So that's a massive difference. If you've got a large UK pension, imagine you could be taking that out without paying any tax in the UK, and you're living in a country where the living costs are much, much cheaper. Vietnam's got a similar treaty as well, where you don't pay UK tax. As I mentioned before, Singapore has got a tax treaty with the UK. Unfortunately, it's silent on UK pensions. So the UK takes that as it's their responsibility to tax you a nice generous 20 to 40% per year. So as I said at the start of this presentation, we don't want to make financial decisions first. So you shouldn't just move to Malaysia just because you might be able to save a load of tax on your pension. But it's definitely worth understanding some of these implications, because maybe Malaysia wasn't on your radar before, and now you can start thinking about it and saying, well, is this the kind of lifestyle I'd want? Is it actually workable or not? So definitely international tax planning can play quite a big part in this as well. What are your retirement options? So a lot of countries have different visa schemes. Singapore, we've covered. Obviously, you need to be a PR, and then you might need to think about being a route to citizen if you want to stay here. Malaysia has had this My Second Home program on and off for a while. Thailand has got a well-known Thai visa requirement. So a lot of countries in Southeast Asia really do want foreigners to come and relocate and be retirees in that country. So it's worth having a look at those and understanding what they are. A word of caution is a lot of these schemes tend to change and shift with the political landscape. So as we see different political parties coming in, they might promote or remove certain elements. And a really good example of this is Malaysia. So the My Second Home program, the previous scheme that they ran was you could have a retirement visa for 10 years. You had to prove that you had a monthly offshore income of 3,200 Sing dollars, so about $38,000 per year. You needed a fixed deposit in Malaysia, about 48K, and you needed to prove you had about $111,000 in liquid assets. So this was very popular for Singaporeans wanting to be over the border, obviously got very easy links back to Singapore. A lot of expats would go and base themselves in Malaysia. Well, Malaysia have just changed the scheme and released it in the last few weeks, and it's massively changed. So now you only get a 5-year visa. Instead of being able to prove that you're spending about $38,000 a year, you've now got to be spending $153,000 a year. So if you think about my simple model of people with 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, if you've got $2 million and I'm saying you can spend 80,000 a year, you cannot get a retirement visa in Malaysia. You don't spend enough. You also need a fixed deposit of about 320,000 in Malaysia. So now you've got cash that you've got to have sat around that's going to be a drag. So really, this is only going to appeal to people that have maybe got 4 to 5 million of investable assets and above, which Malaysia say they're trying to target people that are higher net worth. But it'll be interesting to see how well that goes. So definitely a word of caution that if you're thinking about where you might want to base yourself and you're looking at these various different schemes, you perhaps can't assume that these are going to be long-term options, because we're seeing a lot of these schemes come in and out.